Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special podcast. Today we have a returning guest to the show, Brian Ochsner. Brian is a Kansas wheat farmer. Brian is an economic analyst, and he's a health and wellness educator. And I got to tell you, last March in 2020, when we had Brian on the show, he said that there would be enough food for this crisis as long as the trucks could keep rolling. Then in November of 2020, he said that affordability was going to be the challenge with food. Then in the spring of this year, Brian said that food prices were going to be going up even more. They sure have. And here in November of 2021, my goodness, I got to tell you, we have got to get Brian's insight now more than ever. So, Brian, I'd like to thank you for joining us again on Silver Doctors.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Good to be here.
Now, Brian, now we don't need the government's consumer price inflation index to tell us that food prices are skyrocketing right now, Brian. I mean, my tortilla chips have doubled in price over the last year. That's just one thing. The grocery store shelves, they're still half empty. They're sporadic at best. They're still not fully stocked. Even Little Caesars, after forever and a day, Little Caesars has raised the price of their $5 pizza to $5.55. And I do have this sneaky suspicion that they're putting less cheese and toppings on it. So, Brian, help us understand what has been going on with food prices. Why are food prices skyrocketing? And just help us make some sense of it all to start off this conversation today, Brian.
Sure. I think it starts with just basic economics. As you know, last year when this virus stuff hit and the economies were shut down across the country, the Federal Reserve expanded the money supply to insane levels. And FedGov obviously borrowed and spent that money just getting into the stimmy checks, and everything else into the system. And because of that, all that economic stimulus and monetary inflation, it's going to find its way into everything. Obviously food, energy, retail goods, whatever you buy, it's gone up. Obviously you pay more for it, now than you did even 6 months or a year ago. What people, the reason we were able to get away with spending so much money in the past is because of the petrodollar system. Okay, as you know, so basically this goes back to the late 60s when Lyndon Johnson had his guns and butter program. The same thing. We were spending money on military adventures in Vietnam. We were spending it on the war on poverty, other social programs. And back then, foreign countries could get payment either in dollars or gold. And because the other countries were figuring this out, that this is unsustainable, and that it was inflating the money supply and the value of the dollars were going down, they chose gold. And then, as we know, back in '71, Nixon closed the gold window, which means that countries didn't have the option of choosing gold for payment. They had to take dollars. And then at the same time, Nixon realized that, hey, we got to do something to prop the value of the dollar up. So he went to so it was basically what they call the petrodollar system. I think he had Kissinger go to Saudi Arabia. And with the Saudis, he made a deal that they couldn't refuse. He said, if you and other OPEC partners agree to, force oil transactions to be in dollars, we will protect your government against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They said, sign us up, and that's gone on for the last, 40, 50, going on 50 years. But now that, it looks like other countries using the rise of China as an economic power, people are, other countries are using the yuan in foreign trade. It appears that the petrodollar system is going or has gone away. So we're going to have to face the consequences of all this money printing, borrowing, and spending in the economy. And I think it's going forward. It's not a matter of if prices for food, energy, and everything else is going to go up. It's a matter of by how much. And the U.S. dollar is no longer. I mean, I don't know that this is one area I don't know real well, but I know the basics of it. As far as foreign policy, foreign economics. But it looks like the petrodollar system is going away, and we're going to feel the effects of inflation that the petrodollar system managed to help us avoid for the better part of 40, 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, these are definitely interesting times that we're facing with this US dollar. And I would even take it one step further and possibly call it a dollar crisis. So let's get into that though, because it's like these are a root issue, but people are talking about other stuff. Like, for example, they're talking about, 2 years ago, they were talking about, well, food prices are going up because of, weather problems and all these droughts and all these fires and all this floods and all this and all that. And excuse me. And now, for the last year, we've been talking about supply chain disruptions. So just talking about, just like the American farmer getting food to the American grocery store, right? Because, you hear, oh, there's now another record number of ships sitting at anchor outside of ports in California and stuff like that. But, they're not waiting to unload American corn and they're not waiting to unload American wheat, right? So just, I guess the question is, amidst all this chaos that we see, what is like some of the ramifications of the supply chain disruptions when it comes to American farmers? Like, what are some of the challenges with that? Are they the same kind of disruptions? Are they different disruptions? Or what are farmers facing right now as far as the challenges that go?
Great question. As far as the weather and drought goes, yes. I mean, we've seen some some dry weather for sure that's affected the our planning for fall planning and also fall harvest. I've driven from eastern Colorado to western Kansas back and forth numerous times, and the corn crop it's like somebody took a blowtorch to it. Dryland corn is pretty much toast. Yields can't be very good. Irrigated corn is better, but it still doesn't look great by any stretch of the imagination. So I think we are going to see lower corn harvest and yields and inventory, and that is affecting the corn price and the wheat price. They're both going up. The biggest thing with regards to supply chains is that I think it's twofold. It's how we're going to, how we're growing the food and how we're transporting the food. Because our system of our agriculture system of growing food and also transporting it, well, that depends on reliable, affordable energy, mainly gas and diesel fuel. And obviously, we've seen those prices go up quite a bit. I think we're not done yet. So I think it's going to change that. What I call the 500-mile loaf of bread. The days are numbered for what I call the 500-mile loaf of bread and the 3,000-mile Caesar salad. Those are on life support right now. Here's what I mean by that. So let's say with bread, you obviously bake it. Comes from wheat. You harvest the wheat in, say, western Kansas. You transport it a couple hundred miles any direction to get it processed and baked into bread, and it's shipped back into back to the grocery stores and where it originally came from, which is kind of crazy. It doesn't make any sense to me. And same thing with Caesar's, like the salad, which you get lettuce and other produce from around the country, and it's shipped a long ways, 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, or 3,000 miles. I think we're headed for a time where we're going to see more local and regional processing and manufacturing of food and other goods, because it may not be. I think there'll come a time where it may not be feasible to ship those goods certain long distances across the United States. I think it'll go more toward rail, because rail is more, obviously is more effective than trucking, more cost efficient, and you're going to see trucks transported from the rail line to their final destination. That's what I kind of envision. When it comes to agriculture and how we raise food, at least how we do it in our neck of the woods, we do a lot of plowing and spraying. So a lot of trips, several trips over the land to plow and kill the weeds, using chemicals to also, kill weeds and pests, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense from a lot of levels, from an agricultural, economic, lost my train of thought there. Anyway, from an agricultural economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me. It's time intensive, and it really, it's kind of like tradition. We've always done it this way, so we keep continuing to do it. But it's I think those days are numbered as well, because if you don't have the say diesel fuel prices continue to go up, gas prices continue to go up, and then, obviously fertilizer and chemical prices will continue to rise as well, it's going to be tough for guys to outpace those price increases, and from a cash management standpoint. So I think you're going to see more, more minimum till, maybe even no till. I think it would be wise for guys to know, to look at their soil pH, get the nutrients right, and use cover crops, to as in lieu of fertilizer, and instead of getting a clean weed-free field. It's not going to look as pretty, but I think financially, we're going to come to a time where it's just not feasible. We can't do it. So that's what I see.
Now, Brian, what you're talking about kind of like sparks me to think about like early on in March of 2020 when everything shut down. When everything shut down in March of 2020, a lot of the stuff that people were talking about was, well, a lot of these manufacturing facilities have to retool to be able to switch their focus, because before a lot of stuff is going to like restaurants and hotels and this and that. Now it's going to consumers. So kind of what I'm hearing is that there would also have to be some sort of like a retooling to make all this happen, from a very machine, chemical intensive type of farming to like perhaps a no-till type farming. I mean, that's like night and day right there. So could you explain that just a little bit more, Brian?
Yeah, sure. So from a processing standpoint and sales standpoint, I think instead of seeing big farmers going over mega acres, like hundreds or thousands of acres a year, and going on volume, I think you're going to see smaller, and like I could say, maybe call it like maybe boutique farming, if you will, or niche farming, where you'll sell the crop to a closer consumer, say restaurants or individual households, or maybe even grocery stores. So that's what you want to do. And so for the implement dealers, it's going to be a change for the implement dealers and chemical dealers, because I think they'll see a lower amount of sales and service revenue. So I mean, it's going to take time for farmers to realize this. I think I'd like to do this with our operation as soon as possible, because these trends are, it's like kind of the lighthouse. The old story about the boat and the lighthouse. The boats at night, and radios the lighthouse. He doesn't know it's the lighthouse. He says, such and such, you need to change your course. He says, no, the lighthouse tells the boat, you need to change your course. And they go back and forth and basically say, sorry, we're the lighthouse. You're going to run on the rocks. You need to change your course. So the markets are the lighthouse. Now the markets will dictate how things. It doesn't matter what the government does. It doesn't matter what the Fed does. I think the Fed's out of economic ammo. So the markets will dictate how we're going to grow food and distribute it in the future. I think it could be a painful and painful process. I mean, people will be pissed off at the government. People will be pissed off at whatever scapegoat they want. But it's really just it's the markets that are going to dictate these changes in how we grow food. And I think it's going to be non-negotiable. And anybody's welcome to fight me on it, but I'm willing to bet money that I'm right in the future. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm 100% on my forecast, but I just don't see, how, unless I just don't see a way out that these changes don't occur. We're going to continue to see inflation. We've got to adjust accordingly, with the price increases and then supply chain problems. We may not have availability of certain fertilizers, chemicals, and inputs. So in that case, it's another reason why farmers should look at, doing, minimum till or less tillage, is because the less you drive your tractor, obviously your fuel costs will be lower, but the lower risk you'll have of a breakdown and having to wait on a part for, several days, maybe a week or longer. So those are the risks, and that's the outline, or that's what I see in the future as far as what's coming down the pike.
That's very interesting too, because I think that anecdotally we've seen like a little bits and pieces of what you're talking about. Like, for example, there was a school district in Alabama that put up this Facebook post saying, we're sorry, but sometimes we're not able to provide quite the food, or we got to substitute the food for the school lunches and the school breakfast, or we're not even able to provide what we think we're going to be able to provide because we're not able to get the products when we order them. And they're saying in that Facebook post, and I wrote an article on this, it was a few weeks back, but we're trying to work with local farmers and this and that to try and diversify where we get our food from. So it's like what you're talking about is like almost like the vanguard of this transition. And those who are on it seem like they're going to be okay, but those who are not. So that's the next question. As I cough here, as I'm getting over it. So the next question is, because we see the price of wheat very strong, right? And we see the price of crude oil rising. We see, we hear talk about fertilizer at these record high prices. I don't know if they're at record highs, but fertilizer prices skyrocketing and stuff like that. Chemicals, like you said. So you had said before that great prices for wheat aren't necessarily a good thing for the farmers. So, is that still the case, or because of these input costs, or could you elaborate on that a little bit, Brian?
Sure. I think from a top line standpoint, it's kind of deceiving because farmers we've seen over the last several years before last year, $3 or $4 a bushel. We just kind of, grind and bear it. That's all we were able to get. And now I'm saying $7 a bushel, and I'm saying, woo, party time. And yeah, from a top line standpoint, it's great. But then you factor in your higher costs of fuel, fertilizer, chemicals on that, and implements, and your net may not be as good. I mean, I think the net from last year and this year, the net profit may be better because I think the commodity price increases may have been able to outpace the input price increases. But it's still, it all comes down to the net profit. That's the bottom line. So I'm not sure if farmers are going to be able to outpace the commodity prices are going to be able to outpace the rise in input prices. One way they can hedge against that is maybe buy call options on the futures market, and maybe like buy a call and sell a put. That's kind of a hedge there. You're getting income and then the potential upside from the call option. So, but also another thing when it comes to wheat and corn, we're talking about GMO versus non-GMO crops. So corn's a non-GMO crop, and wheat's a non-GMO crop. Corn is a GMO. For most corn is GMO in the United States. Last February in Mexico, their president and government banned the use of glyphosate. That's the main chemical in Monsanto's weed killer Roundup. And they banned the production and importation of GMO corn. And as you've seen the prices go up, corn has still gone up, quite a bit. But wheat is on the cash market, it's about $2 a bushel higher than corn. I think that's because it's a non-GMO crop versus a GMO crop. And it's also supply too. And what I don't understand about most farmers where I'm from, everybody and their dog wants to grow corn. I have no idea why. It's just wheat and corn, wheat and corn. And from a business standpoint, that's dumb. You don't do what everyone else does. You should do something differently, like niche markets. Maybe go direct to consumers. Maybe try maybe popcorn. Maybe certain other crops. And I think people are going to be industrial hemp. I think is a great option in the future. Now, hemp has its own infrastructure and supply chain challenges because it's been dormant for 80 years until recently. But that's what I see as far as wheat and corn goes, and as far as the why those prices have gone up and why wheat's gone up more than corn. Oh, I think you're muted, Paul. You're muted.
Oh yeah. I was muted. That's good. Thanks for reminding me. I'm getting over this cold, so I'm a little bit like coffee and sniffly and stuff like that. But that's very interesting because for years we have heard that the U.S. used to be the world's largest corn producer, but now it's like, I mean, we got to adapt and overcome. as they used to say in the army, or else, you're going to get left behind if countries stop, importing your corn and stuff like that.
Great point. I think we still are the largest corn producer in the world. But when it comes to wheat, here's what's interesting. The U.S. is only the fourth largest wheat producer in the world. India is number 3, Russia's number 2, and China is number 1. China produces almost three times as much wheat as the United States does. So, it used to be that growing up we heard that American farmers feed the world. Not anymore. That's the challenge with that, and that's the reason why I'm bearish on grains, is because that foreign demand isn't there anymore to keep that floor under the price and keep it sustained. Now with inflation, hey, the price is going up. Things look good from a top line standpoint, but that's why I think from a going forward is that farmers need to look at alternative crops besides wheat and corn if they want to be have greater net profits and sustainability for the long term. I mean, wheat, don't get me wrong, wheat and corn are always going to be staples, and there's always going to be a steady demand for that. Like for wheat, you have like for bread, pizza dough, pasta, and other items. But there's just not going to be a really high upside with the grains for wheat, corn, and soybeans. And I think as we enter this new era of the economy and agriculture, farmers need to be better businessmen. They need to think like businessmen. What's the market demand? Who needs this crop? Where can we sell it? Instead of just harvest and go to the elevator and rinse and repeat. And don't get me wrong, the reason why farmers don't want to do it is because it's extra work. And farming is already plenty of work to begin with. So, that's more work is not what most farmers want to do. But I think it's going to have to be, guys are going to have to look at those alternative crops and markets, going forward, and a plan to, diversify besides traditional crops, wheat, corn, and soybeans.
That really speaks to kind of like the weird upside down world that we live in, where you can have rising grain prices and then you're bearish on the grains. Brian, is like blowing my mind just slightly a little bit there.
It is. No, I agree. And again, it's inflation is kind of makes things deceiving, because you're seeing the prices go up and cash wheat right today is like about over $7.60 a bushel. And I never would have believed that would be possible, 3 years ago. But now I think it's possible that we'll see a 10 handle on cash wheat within the next 2 years or maybe less. Just because of we've gone from like prices of $3 to $4 a bushel of wheat, and we're looking at almost double in about roughly 12, 18 months. So you just do the math, even 50% will take it above double digits.
Wow.
And so how do we, now we know that the problem here, what's the solution? How can people, prepare for it or defend themselves against it? I think the best thing people can do is learn to grow your own food. Whether it's indoors in your house or basement, or a greenhouse, hoop house, whatever, during the winter months or during the spring, summer months, get as much land as you can and grow the heck out of it. Because don't worry, you'll have plenty. It's kind of like the old Field of Dreams movie, then they say with the saying, build it and they will come. Well, I think when you grow the food, you'll have a market for it. Don't worry about that. I don't think that's going to be a problem. You're not going to be stuck with excess tomatoes or cantaloupe or radishes or whatever. You'll have a buyer. I'll bet money that you'll have a ready-made buyer, whether it's a household or restaurant, for your produce that you grow either in or around your house. So that's learn how to do that. Learn the basics of growing food and how to grow a good crop. I think that's a great place to start.
And if I could kind of like add to that a little bit, I'm in my second year of home backyard gardening, and I mean it is like very hard, because it takes years and years to go from like no homegrown food to homegrown food being able to have an impact on the dinner table. Which brings me to like one of the things that kind of I'm thinking about as you're talking is, it seems like in the future, another reason to do this, just as individuals is because it also seems like there's going to be less selection and availability of food grown going forward. And let me explain that as soon as I cough real quick. So going forward, I'm thinking about like crop selection and thinking about crop selection and things like that. For example, like I'm not trying to learn how to grow pumpkins or watermelon because it takes all season to grow a melon. And I mean,
Right.
you might get one if you're lucky, at least where I live in my climate zone, right? So in Ohio, like I'm not looking to grow pumpkins and tomatoes just for me in my backyard. Plus, it's a ton of space, but we're also going to have to be very selective, maybe as individuals or as large scale farmers, or because we're going to have to grow things that economically make sense, as you said, but things that are also going to be able to actually provide for us, and not stuff that we're going to be able to like gamble on, like, oh my goodness, well, I hope that the weather holds off for just another few weeks here so these pumpkins can ripen or something like that. So what am I missing? What am I not thinking about? Or did you have anything you wanted to add on to that, Brian?
No, that's a good point. I think another thing you want to grow another aspect you want to think about is, as far as growing your food, is the health aspect. You know, I think the biggest investment everyone can make going forward is in your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And you know, if your body is healthy, you know, it makes the other three it's easier for the other three to be in good shape as well. No guarantees, but I think you have to look at you know, growing good food and healthy food, like tomatoes, a great crop, fairly easy to grow, and they're pretty nutritious. And also look at inexpensive ways to maintain your health. A couple of health hacks for me has been drinking more beet juice and lemon juice, not the concentrate, but actual real juice, real lemons. You can get them in like little bottles for like $1 a piece for now. They're really inexpensive. I've been drinking, you know, a couple ounces of beet juice and a couple ounces of lemon juice every day. Feel fantastic. I mean, it's a really inexpensive way to get, you know, to just feel better and have more energy in general. So, and along with that, I think just exercise as much as you can, keep your weight in check, because you do not want to be at the mercy of Big Pharma right now. That's another expense. If you're taking a bunch of pills, you're spending $100, $200 a month on that. Those prices are probably going to go up as well. And pills are not the best thing for your good health. I don't take any pharmaceuticals at all. And good Lord willing, I will not, you know, for as long as I'm on this earth, hopefully. But I think, but you really need to do some research as far as you know, how to keep yourself healthy without drugs or procedures. Keep your weight in check, and I think that's, you know, your investment in your health is going to be one of the best things you can invest in, besides food and hard assets in the years to come.
And then on top of that is just the quality is so much better, right? When you pick a tomato in your backyard and you eat it, it's like it doesn't even compare. And not to knock on farmers, but that's just the system that we have, right? They can't help it that they have to pick them green and either inject some sort of gas into it or hope that it ripens or whatever it is that's happening here. Cover it in wax. I mean, all sorts of little tricks that's the grocers too, right? All sorts of little tricks that are done that just speak to a lower quality of food when we could be having better quality food, which can help with helping keep the health. And as I'm sick now and getting over a cold for the second time this year, these are important things, right? And I can totally see that. Now, shifting gears a little bit here, Brian, you know, I know that you know, we've been seeing, like, right now there's like this John Deere worker strike or something like that, and there's like this labor issue going on, and we've seen some strikes around, and now they're talking like this is not in the United States, this is Canada, but I guess there's like some meat packing facility or meat processing facility for beef where there could be a worker strike starting in early December. So it's like there's been some labor issues and there's been some worker issues. So I guess like you know, the question is like are these types of issues something that is going to affect food and food prices and the food supply in general, or what do you make of like John Deere striking? Because read an article and you make, oh, now here's the next problem for food production. There's a strike at John Deere. Like, what does that mean? Like for the American person, for the American who's buying food in a grocery store, does that mean anything? Do we look into that?
I don't think it'll affect the food production or availability as much as people would think. And that's for a number of reasons. Number one, inflation has also hit machinery prices as well. So most farmers that I know, it used to be years ago, guys would buy new equipment on a fairly regular basis, every 3-5 years, no problem. But now you've got the prices of some of these tractors, and it's everything. It's sprayers, tillage implements, tractors are just insane. I saw a price online for a brand new John Deere 4-wheel drive tractor, like 200 horsepower, $597,000. And even if you borrow the money and borrow it at, say, 5% interest, just the interest alone is like $30,000 a year, which doesn't make any sense.
Now this isn't your backyard John Deere. This is like a massive tractor.
This is a farm tractor. This isn't the little riding mower or weekend farmer tractor. This is we're talking big green machine that can pull large implements behind it and go over a lot of acres.
But $500,000 is like
wow. And here's the reason. So monetary inflation is one reason those prices have gone up, but another reason is because of industrial age pension plans. So Deere's workers are with the United Auto Workers, UAW, and they still have defined benefit pension plans. And that means that when workers retire, they will get a lump sum, a fixed sum of money guaranteed every month for the rest of their lives. Now, that's really, when you factor that in, that's the reason Deere's had to raise those prices, is to fund these industrial age pension plans. But it's getting to a level, I think they probably come up for negotiations again, and the unions have to get bullying them around, and Deere's saying, looking at the prices, looking at the numbers and saying, no, we can't do this. No more concessions. I think workers in general are seeing that, hey, my paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. Yeah. That's why they're going to be mad about it. So I think because we're going to see more inflation in the years to come, we're going to see more labor disruptions or strikes. And I don't blame them for being pissed off, but they just don't know what, it's just economics and numbers, but it's their meal, it's their livelihood to them. So I think that's going to be a challenge. And besides growing food, I think what a lot of people should do is look, if you like to eat beef, look for ranchers who will sell direct to you. And you can find there's plenty of places there. It's a growing industry. What they call farm to fork or pasture to plate. Farmers that sell direct to consumers. You can find plenty of them. Just if you have a weekend, just drive around outside your city or suburban area. Drive 50 to 100 miles outside. Go to local towns. Go to cafes. Just ask around, and you'll find people who can, or just do a search online, and you'll find ranchers who want to sell beef direct, and you'll probably get this as good or better quality beef than you will at the grocery store. And when it comes to another thing, when it comes to beef and labeling, is because the beef that you get at the grocery store may or may not be grown here in America. That's because Congress years ago, there's an acronym called COOL, which is Country of Origin Labeling, which was mandatory until a few years ago. Then Congress said, "Oh, you don't have to do that. You can just, so beef packers, the big four beef packers, don't have to disclose where the beef comes from. When it says made in America, it means processed in America, not necessarily raised in America. So it could be from Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, a foreign country, or cheap, who knows what the quality is. So that's another reason why I think if you're looking for beef, you want to go direct to ranchers, ask them how they raise it, and even Wagyu. You can probably get some good Wagyu beef for maybe the same price. Maybe you'll pay a little more for it. You'll pay a premium for Wagyu beef, but it's great quality steaks and great beef. So that's what I recommend for folks to look at and to do.
That's very interesting because it's almost like over the years as consumers are paying for beef at the grocery store. Well, if there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes, that kind of has pulled prices down as this is going on, as processors shift from American beef to imported beef that somehow is cheaper and they can get it even imported cheaper. Well, that deflationary effect is over, and there's like only one way for prices to go, which would be up in that sense, if my thinking is right on that. And exactly. Then the other point, to get on the John Deere thing again, as soon as I cough one more time. Okay, and the other point to get on the John Deere thing again is like there's no easy solution for this because like veterans or Social Security recipients, Social Security disability, all this and all that is like federal employees, I'm sure too. They're going to be getting like 5.9% more starting in January as a cost of living adjustment. So that's one thing. Workers' wages are apparently rising at 4.9% through October, while the CPI is rising at 6.2%. And then I'm thinking about what you're talking about with John Deere, and there's a pension problem. But, well, what's to stop the farmer from turning? Because I remember I've had over like 30 cars. I lost count, but I really like cars and trucks and stuff like that. And I remember a long time ago, I wanted this Mahindra, right? Which was like it was going to be, and they still have them throughout the world, but a 1-ton, 4-wheel drive, 4-door, 4-cylinder diesel pickup truck. Compact, right? And they never let them come to the United States. Probably Ford and GM had something to do with that. But my thinking is, well, if John Deere, if they keep raising all this stuff for all this defined benefits plans and pension and this and that, well, people are just going to switch to Mahindra, and then you got a trade issue going on, and then people just aren't going to buy the John Deere anyway. So is that thinking logical? Because it seems like there's just no happy solution for any of this stuff, Brian.
No, there's not. And farmers have been pretty brand loyal when it comes to their tractors. If they've run John Deere, they'll continue to run John Deere. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these prices for both, not just for implements, but for service. I mean, if you break down and you call the implement dealer up to have a mechanic come out, you're talking a couple $100 an hour. Maybe it might be a little high, but you're talking a pretty healthy rate for to get your tractor fixed. Luckily, we have a guy in our hometown who's a John Deere mechanic who's independent and does it for a lower rate, which is great. But yeah, there's gonna have to be some workarounds and changes. There's gonna be a breaking point where it's not gonna be economically feasible to keep doing what you're doing. I know in rural areas, it's change is can be kind of a 4-letter word, but I think we're gonna be forced to adapt. And let me just say something about when it comes to like changes and when it comes to business versus your baseline morals and ethics values. When it comes to your values and ethics, those should rarely, if ever, change. Those should be your base, rock solid, your true north, your moral compass. Now when it comes to business and it comes to how do you get things done and making changes in markets and how you do things, you should be very adaptable. I think folks are going to have to be really, be more adaptable than they ever thought they had to be in the future. So that's why I'm thinking ahead. I've had people say, "Oh, that'll never happen here. Oh, you're blowing smoke," and I'm like, I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be, we're going to have to be adaptable and we're going to have to make changes and be more flexible in thinking and how we do business. It's going to be it may be a little volatile and scary time, but it'll be an exciting time too. I think if you can see things correctly and take the right actions and you're willing to help people, they have some great economic business opportunities there for folks in the future. And that's another thing. It's, capitalism is generally about, in its purest form, capitalism, it should be a voluntary transactions based on the best interest of the consumer, of your customer. And that's what I strive to do. And I think I'd urge all you and everyone else to do as well, is just make sure you have people's best interest at heart. Because I think you've already seen in good economic times, people trying to get over on others, And I think one of the most valuable currencies in the future, it isn't gold. It won't be crypto. It'll be trust in a person or a company. And you have to maintain that trust. You can't just let it, skate for a while, work hard to maintain that and let it ride. You got to keep earning that every day, month, year, for the rest of your life. So, yeah, I've done a bit of a rant there, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Very solid and very sound advice. Absolutely right there. So Brian, we've been talking about a lot today. We've talked about a lot today, and we didn't even get into everything, right? We didn't get into to the fact that 2 weeks ago China was supposedly cracking down on vegetable hoarders, and then last week now all of a sudden they're saying we'll stock up because there might be food shortages this winter. So I was like, well, what's going on there? So there's like so much stuff going on right now. So just when it comes to food production, when it comes to and not asking you to speak to that, but just saying there's so much going on right now. I mean, you can speak to it if you want to, but there's so much going on right now that like, what are like some of the things that are on your radar the most when it comes to food production and food prices as we move in to the end of the year and into the winter? Because the growing season is over now for 2022, or it's coming to an end, depending on where you are in the country. And it's a season, right? And it's a cycle. So what are some of the things you're thinking about now as we head into the end of the year and the cold months here?
I'm looking at how to grow food without a lot of chemicals or inputs. Also looking just to do some more indoor growing of different things like tomatoes and other crops. And also my focus is on helping other farmers do the same thing. Look ahead and be able to get as good or better yields without what I call the plow, spray, and pray method of farming, which hasn't served farmers that well anyway in the past, because it benefits the implement dealers, the chemical companies, the seed companies. I mean, I should say the GMO seed companies. But yeah, I think I'm just focusing on growing more crops myself, more food myself. And I guess looking at just the rate of increase of these price increases, trying to keep an eye on how fast they're going, and just preparing. I guess I think it's really. I don't think you can really react to anything from here on out. The monetary inflation is baked in the cake. We'll continue to see higher prices, and and maybe supply chain problems and shortages in the future. I think my focus is on adapting to these changes, trying to stay ahead of the curve, and also just just not reacting too much in the news. I think one of the best things you can do is just shut the news off. It's at this point, it's basically what I call mainstream news, even Fair and Balanced Fox News. It's basically propaganda. You're not going to learn anything from the if you're waiting for it to come on your TV or your newspaper or the radio. It's probably not. You're not probably going to hear it there. You want to look for alternative sources like Silver Doctors and other podcasts and sites around the internet. I think the best thing I'm just preparing ahead, trying to stay ahead of the curve. I'm not really looking at anything necessarily, other than I don't know. Government will do what government wants to do. They'll continue to print money, try and debase the currency and pay the debt out with cheaper dollars, but they can't do it. There's just no way it's gonna happen. So I guess my answer is just to prepare, stay ahead of the curve as much as I can. Prepare accordingly, and be able to deal with a world that can be much different tomorrow than it is today.
Well, there you have it, folks. It is definitely going to be much different and much more expensive tomorrow than it is today. But luckily, we got Brian with us, and I hope that he comes back next spring to tell us just how bad or how hopefully good it's going to be next year. It's going to be a great growing season, but who knows what's going to happen with the prices. Brian Ochsner, I'd like to thank you for joining us again on Silver Doctors.
Hey, Paul, glad to be here. Thanks again.